everybody, and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. I've been in crypto for over 8 years, and over my 8 years I've been able to amass a life-changing amount of wealth for myself, my family, and even some of my friends and people that follow me on YouTube. During that time, I've had the ability to be able to see trends before they play out in a big way, and for this cycle, I see a few cryptos that stand out much farther above the rest. For today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the price of Hex, why I believe that this thing is setting up for some of the biggest upside potential over the full bull run, and what it means for long-term investors moving forward from here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video, and I wanted to go through breaking down the price of Hex because I truly see an opportunity here that stands out much further above the rest of the markets. When we're looking at different cryptos, there's always certain narratives that are going to catch on. There's ones that are going to blow up. We were early to Arbitrum, we were early to Optimism, we were early to Momentous, and many of these other ecosystems. And when we're talking about things that can outperform massively, there's a few assets that I think stand out, and Hex is definitely one of those assets. Now, talking about Hex, the reason I wanted to talk about it today, I found something inside of the chart that I know is going to blow your guys' mind, and when I found this for myself, it really gave a lot of validity to the strength of Hex's, long-term trend. Regardless of the massive correction that I had in the bear market, this thing followed conventional Elliott wave theory. It also has followed what we're going to be talking about now in the 4-year cycle. So guys, 4-year cycles was something I just made a video about recently, analyzing Bitcoin, how every 4 years Bitcoin bottoms and completes and starts actually a new cycle in its place. Now, we've talked about these 4-year cycles and how every single Bitcoin bottom of the bear market happens 4 years from the last bear market bottom. 4 years equals 1,450 days. So almost to the exact month, we are seeing every 4 years Bitcoin bottoms, 4 years from the last cycle. So that's why we follow these 4-year cycles. We see 3 years up, and then we see 1 year down. 3 years up, 1 year down. And that's the way that our cycles have worked up to this point. Now, what's unique about Hex's situation is Hex has only been around for one cycle. Remember, the way you analyze a cycle is from peak low of the bear market to peak low of the bear market. And the distance in between both of those should equal 4 years, or be, relatively close to. So if we draw the very peak low of Hex's very, first cycle when it got added to exchanges, when it dumped, if you draw a data point from the very bottom of that all the way over here to the cycle low that we just made at the end of, or mid-October, you're looking at just under 1,400 days. Now guys, remember, 1,450 days equals 4 years. So we've basically followed this 4-year cycle. It's only a 2-month difference. That's close enough to call it a true 4-year cycle. And so seeing Hex perfectly bottom, break out after that, and then to see us actually sitting here creating that big inverse head and shoulder pattern, we're at the point of reversing. I believe that full-heartedly. When we're seeing that we've bottomed perfectly to 4-year cycle, it gives validity to the long-term trend of Hex because there's very, very few altcoins in the market that will ever follow a 4-year cycle. You have Ethereum, and then you have, Solana actually followed one technically in this cycle, but we didn't even have enough data to go off of with Solana because Solana didn't get added to exchanges until 2020, whereas Hex goes all the way back to 2019, right? So when we're seeing these things, Hex has one of the better ones I've seen out of all the altcoins, and there's only a handful of altcoins that ever follow these 4-year cycles. So basically what we're looking at here, now that we've completed the 4-year cycle, we're looking at a reversion, right? We're looking at a reversal point. We're looking at this being the ending of our bear market from peak high to peak low, and this being the beginning of our new bull market, right? And that's where I think that we're at right now. So looking at the price of Hex, where do I think that we could be headed? How is the market structure going to look? Are we going to end up seeing a new all-time high? Could Hex potentially go to $1 and beyond? We're going to get into all of those details. To start, I just wanted to break down this 4-year cycle trend to share with you guys how now that we've actually finished and bottomed exactly 4 years from the beginning of our last bear market bottom, we're looking at a complete trend reversal and the ending of this bear market. We've already got the reversal, and we're pretty much at the last line of defense before we start breaking out. So that's a very important thing to understand when it comes to Hex. So when we come over here, I wanted to share with you guys a fractal of a market cycle that played out in the last bear market, or really the 2018 bear market, and how it applies to Hex, because the universal thing that I have found, regardless of any cycle it's been that I've invested in, this is my 3rd bull run that I've had the opportunity of riding out from beginning to end. And so this cycle isn't any different. The market cycles look the same. There's maybe a little bit more volatility. There's a little bit more upside in this cycle than there has been in prior ones. So those are all like more bullish things, right? It has nothing to do with anything being more bearish. There's nothing negative about this cycle. And there's definitely nothing negative with HEX. When I look at HEX, I see the same similarities in market structure that I've seen across the board on a number of these market cycles. Looking over here and comparing it to this black outline I have at the top, we're going to kind of go through and I'm going to share with you guys the similarities. So oftentimes inside of a very, hyped cycle, one that gets very overextended inside the bull market, you're going to go through these multiple different levels of lower lows and lower highs. It's almost like you're taking the staircase all the way back down, right? And it's in the most hyped projects where the most hype is driven, the biggest ROI happens, that they fall the hardest. What goes up must come down. That's just how the basic rules of, nature work, I guess you could say. I don't know, I'm not a high school graduate. Anyways, guys, when we're looking at these charts, what we saw here, and this is a universal thing you're going to see across the board on a number of altcoins, but we fall down from the initial peak high, and then you're going to see this sort of descending triangle where we do find a support bottom. Sometimes they can make lower lows. It doesn't have to be an exact descending triangle, but you're going to see this sort of a similarity in structure. We're not necessarily looking at it as a descending triangle, saying, okay, this is a descending triangle, we're trading it as a descending triangle. That's not what I'm trying to explain. We're just simply identifying the similarities in structure, because the similarities in structure just repeat over each and every one of our market cycles. So we can see that HEX did the exact same thing here. It was just a more volatile version of this, but we see the same descending resistance. We have the same support that we hold here for a little while. It's the same sort of setup. Now, eventually we do break down from this, and this is what kind of starts this setup right here, where it looks like it's going to round out. It kind of looks like that's the point of reversing, only for it to just kind of keep going back down for that final lower low, and that's the final capitulation. So where I believe HEX is currently, all we've really done is broke down and then made that final capitulation, right? It was just way more volatile with the launch of Pulse Chain. When they duplicated HEX into p-HEX and all of that stuff, it caused, a massive dilution inside of the price. So when I look at this, fundamentally, a lot has changed as far as HEX goes, considering there's an entire layer 1 ecosystem added on it. There's an entire layer 1 that can be, traded. All of these new tokens can be added to it. All of this new liquidity can be, outsourced from all the other communities out there. And that can ultimately find its way back into HEX. And so even though there's another version of HEX existing on Pulse Chain, even though, a lot of the initial buyers have been kind of sold out, a lot of them have been shaken out by the bear market, I think that there's so much more money that's going to be coming into this market just because of Pulse Chain that there's a new value proposition for why this thing is going to end up having a new cycle. So when I see the price, even though we had this big sell-off, big capitulation that followed, I don't think that this is, anything to be worried about. It's actually presenting a much better buy opportunity than anything else. When we see markets crash like this, it presents massive opportunity. Assuming that this is a reputable project with a good founder, with a good community that are actually going to see adoption long term, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to actually invest into something that has a proven track record, that, the chart looks good, and most definitely has had more value added to it over the last couple years. So when I see this, let's remove these drawing tools and let's kind of just, overlay this real quick. I'm seeing pretty much the same similarities in this structure. The difference is HEX is more volatile, but I think that we're in kind of a hybrid between right here, and that's more or less what's happening in this shorter time frame. Now, keep in mind, guys, that we're at this massive lower low, but what I think is going to end up taking place next is once we break out and we make that run back up to this main, descending resistance, that's where we're really going to find out, what HEX is going to do. I think that we're going to be making a move up to this descending resistance. Once we tag it, pulling back down and making a true higher high. The only way we can make a higher high is to retest our prior levels of support that have now became resistance, because we've obviously made lower lows from that. We have to reclaim those levels as new support. So for us to make this big rally, to come all the way back up to the descending resistance, pull back down to 2 cents approximately, I think that that's going to be setting the first stages before we get that major reversal in this cycle. And I think that that's the most important thing that we need to be watching for moving forward from here. The thing about this is it's got so much bullish divergence. If we come out here on a weekly time frame, the amount of bullish divergence on the OBV has been absolutely massive. We've been maintaining higher highs the entirety that HEX has been making these lower lows in price. And then the same thing can be said on the RSI as well. You don't normally ever see this amount of, oversold conditions based off of the momentum indicators like what we're seeing inside of HEX. And when I zoom out and I see this exact same market cycle playing out in real time, where we're just at the point of reversing, where we're probably just going to do this sort of move right here, and then it's just going to boop, 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 and then you're looking up here, and a dollar isn't that far off, guys. A dollar is right there. So a dollar isn't even that crazy. I think a dollar is a good target. If we were to see HEX go into a new all-time high, have a new cycle, like what we've seen Ethereum do in prior cycles, like what we've seen some of the other top projects do, if HEX is to see adoption long term, it's going to end up doing something like this. It's going to build a new uptrend. It's going to make, higher highs and higher lows, and it'll eventually lead into some type of parabolic blow off top in the same ways that it did over in here. We're at the stages where we're building that new foundation. So this is kind of what I'm looking at when I see HEX. I see the same similarities in price as prior cycles. This is a cycle that I bought and had my family buy in at the very bottom. We made good profit when things broke out. Seeing HEX, we're at a more oversold condition than even what this one was at the last cycle. And when we're talking about upside potential, HEX can easily, just to the all-time high, 52x approximately, over 52x. So if you can get a 52x off of just holding something like HEX, and then you factor in all of Pulse Chain going live and all of the new money that can circulate from the other, crypto communities out there, I just find that the value proposition of HEX this cycle is way bigger, and we have two versions of HEX existing on two different chains. And with Pulse Chain, adding value across the board to every single one of them, I, at the end of the day, think that this thing is going to end up doing very, very well. All of the big OGs that were invested into this project, that believed in it in the beginning, they're all still staked here. They're not going anywhere. I think the eHEX will hold the most value long term, and that's why it's important that we continue to focus on this one first. This one was the first one of the ecosystem. It's basically Bitcoin inside of the Pulse Chain ecosystem. It's got the Bitcoin to Ethereum type relationship going for, the Richard Hart ecosystem, I should say. And so I don't think that anything is going to be changing with that. The only difference is we've been presented with a bigger buy opportunity due to the fact we had such a massive sell-off take place when Pulse Chain went live. Now, coming over here and looking at the price of Solana and HEX were following each other pretty closely, leading into the launch of Pulse Chain. Now, everything was bottoming out right here, and HEX actually outperformed a lot of stuff when that bottom took place at the end of the year. Now, the same thing happened with Solana. The only difference was FTX happened, this thing made a massive capitulation in a lower low, whereas HEX itself, this sort of final capitulation it made, it really wasn't even that big. And so leading into that final breakout, when the markets bottomed, when Solana very first made that higher high, HEX outperformed the majority of that stuff. And then it was actually once Pulse Chain went live right here that we saw this big lower low. We've been going sideways, kind of trending out of that as all of these other cryptos have started outperforming. As Solana, even though it was following the same structure up to this point, in fact, HEX was actually outperforming it, we've actually seen Solana start to take off as HEX sold off inside of that massive capitulation. Now, I do believe that that will change. As we see Solana leading now and continue to make these big moves, these big higher highs and higher lows, I do believe that HEX has just been rounding out, accumulating before we make that first breakout. And it might lag for a short term. As it makes this first higher high right here to start that new uptrend, it might lag in the short term, and don't be caught off guard if that's the case. But the big upside potential is when HEX breaks out and makes the first continuative high from that move, because that's when I think things are going to actually start going into price discovery. So this is the way that I'm seeing things. Looking at Solana going from $9 all the way to $125, seeing HEX having such a big sell-off, just because it had a big sell-off does not mean it can't just instantly start rebounding. In fact, it's generally these sort of assets that get massively oversold in the bear markets that have the strongest reactions back to the upside. So do not fade these sort of things. Now, the last one we're going to be looking at today is going to be PHEX. This is the duplicated version existing over on the Pulse Chain network. Because remember, guys, there was Ethereum HEX, that was the original HEX, that was just HEX built on Ethereum. That was the first coin that Richard Hart ever made. And then when he launched Pulse Chain, he forked Ethereum. So because HEX was existing on Ethereum, he forked HEX at the same time. So this is the forked version of HEX. Now this chart looks phenomenal. I think it looks very bullish. I think both of their charts look very bullish. But all HEX is really doing, the PHEX version, it's just consolidating right at this mid-range. We've been holding this support ever ever since I drew this box, ever since we were, first started breaking out, we've held it a number of times. Even if we come back down and retest it again, I find it more likely we hold it once more before this thing is eventually going to break out. And it will probably follow this exact path that I have drawn, considering once we get above this 2.5 cent region, once we can get above that, we really don't have any resistance. I'm not really counting the prior all-time high as any resistance. I'm counting the resistance as this 22.5 cent level. That's where I think it's much more reasonable, where if we hit this level, we could see a pullback before we get above. But once the market gets above, once we reclaim this as new support, we're going to see the reversal out of that take place. And I think the reversal is a new all-time high in a price discovery. So there's going to be an insane amount of value that's created. Anybody that was actually early, that was holding HEX, actually got this duplicated. You got really good rates into Pulse Chain for sacrificing into that. We're starting to see that whole ecosystem blowing up. And with the launch of Pulse Chain, I think that that's the real backing of value when we're talking about HEX. Because if HEX was able to hit $88 billion in total market cap inside of that last cycle without ever being listed on CoinGecko, without ever being listed on CoinMarketCap, without ever being listed on any centralized exchanges, it hit top 3. It was literally right behind Bitcoin, and it was right behind Ethereum in market cap at the top of that last cycle. So if something like HEX can hit that, with only being community driven and, only being decentralized, I think that the value of Pulse Chain speaks for itself. When we see Pulse Chain get more adoption, when we see the TVL continue to skyrocket and break out like it has, the Pulse Chain TVL is literally sitting on top of the prior all-time highs as new support, just about to go into price discovery. I could not get more bullish on this ecosystem. I could not be more excited about the people that are already invested into here. All of the people that were way earlier than me, all of the people that I faded in the last cycle. You guys are going to make a lot of money, and shout out to everybody that's been here. Shout out to everybody that's been making content in the HEX and Pulse Chain communities. Everybody that's been able to hold through this massive bear market. You have nothing but admiration for me for, being able to stomach all of that. Because it's you people that are going to be rewarded the most at the end of the day. When we see these markets reverse, when we see the markets take off for the first time, you're finally going to realize, why you did all of this, why it was worth it in the end of the day, why all of the FUD, all of the SEC lawsuit, all of the crap that you've kind of had to go through over the last couple of years. It'll become much more clearer once the price sorts itself out. And for me, guys, I've been studying these markets forever. 8 years in crypto, the entire time I've been studying charts, looked at so many charts throughout my life, I don't even know how to put a number on it. And when I see HEX, I see nothing more than your conventional market cycle. It has only just given us a better buying opportunity than even some of the other ones because of the fact Pulse Chain actually created a selling event that allowed us to get in at a better price. So when I look at this thing, I think that the Ethereum version of HEX will do phenomenal. $1 is my target, but I think that it could surpass that. If we have a normal cycle like what we've seen in years past, I think it's very likely we're going to end up seeing this thing go into a fresh all-time high. And $1 really isn't even that far off. I think that we could very easily surpass that. So guys, if you found value in this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. It helps out my channel. I love making this content for you guys. I'm passionate about this community. I believe in HEX. I believe in Pulse Chain, specifically because we're actually building over there. And I'm super excited to just be a part of this whole thing, guys. I think we're all about to make a lot of money. You guys will make way more money that have been in here earlier than me. But regardless, anybody that's getting in now, the market's massively undervalued. HEX still did 100x after the same point in price. So, watch it. Yeah, if you guys want to check out how I'm investing anything, what I'm doing with my money, any altcoins I'm buying inside of the Pulse Chain ecosystem, links are in the description to go ahead and check them out. If you guys want to get access to pre-sales, any of the IDOs that we're watching, launchpad stuff, all of that's inside of my Discord in a private group. So the way you would get access to that is by signing up on my website, linked in the descriptions below. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys. I love you, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.